of yellow.
Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Leah. Welcome to another podcast recording, episode 9. I feel like we're getting dangerously close to double figures, which is, at some point we're going to be looking quite professional.
I know, it's incredible. I feel like we're going to lose count soon and forget what episode number we're on.
I know, that's why we'll be very grand and need a producer or something. Anyway, before we go further on to episode 9, I should introduce us. My name is Emma Marshall. I'm the MD of Miss Bush, and you are?
I'm Leah Spicer-Pownall, and I'm the marketing manager of Miss Bush. And this is the Lovely Job Podcast.
Yeah, go us. That's almost like a jingle level of coordination there now.
I want to start off firstly by saying thank you to everyone that's listening, because every single week I'm obsessively checking the stats, and every week it gets higher and higher. So last week was our best week ever for the new podcast release. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That's very good to know. Very gratifying. Thank you very much that our ramblings have got an audience. So so basically, what we normally do at the beginning of this is recap up our personal week. My personal week was completely without incident because I was so absolutely ill and sick all week. Anybody who listened to last week's podcast will know. I think my 3 bright spots of the week. I had the most life-changing espresso martini made by Tom in Tatham's Bar in Guildford. So that was incredible. And I also met Mara, who's the young designer behind the label Divine Atelier, which is very much a family-run brand. And so she was here, and I got to sit down with her a couple of hours and really learn loads and loads more about Divine Atelier, where they work, how they work, their design ethos, so much more about her, which we'll cover, I think, in a more special podcast or something about just the brand, possibly. But
maybe we can get her on as a guest. We can maybe interview her.
She's very good. She's completely bilingual, so speak. And undoubtedly, if you speak Romanian and English, there's probably another few languages in there as well. But she was very inspiring for someone so young as well. So so my week, obviously the big Suzanne Neville thing, but that's going to be the main part of the podcast. So, and you've had a terrible week, haven't you?
I had quite a sad week last week. I said goodbye to one of my dogs on Tuesday. He was very, very old, and it's something we've been thinking about for a while. He was blind, deaf, couldn't move around very well, and he was starting to get dementia. So he wasn't sleeping, just up all night, crashing into things, and he was just miserable. So it was time for us to say goodbye, sadly. I had a couple of days off last week.
And how is everybody? How are the other dogs taking it? I don't want you to anthropomorphize your other dogs, but they seem such a little pack. Are they okay?
Yeah, they're okay. So Bailey, the one that we said goodbye to, always used to kind of groom Colin. He used to lick him all the time, and before he kind of got really bad, he used to, and then he hasn't for a while. And Scratch has never actually done that before to Colin. And then the day that we said goodbye, Scratch just spent the evening just grooming Colin, and I think he was comforting him. You know, that dogs are like a big part of our lives, and obviously with the weddings that we blog as well, whenever there's a dog featured in a wedding, I love it. Dogs are really a big part of my life. I know they're a big part of a lot of our brides' lives as well. So yeah, it's
I actually sold 2 brides dresses on, actually no, one person came to meet Suzanne and one person chose her dress on Saturday, but they both work in dogs. That sounds like a really weird thing. Professional dog walkers and dog rehab people, and working for dog charities and things like that. So it's not just a big part of people's lives personally and family lives. It is a really big part of I think our psyche as a nation and people's career choices as well. So I totally get it. Obviously I'm a mad cat lady, so I haven't really entered the dog zone yet. So but yeah, I know, I just knew how much it meant to you, and I know that I was trying to, people going, "It's only photos." I'm like, don't speak to Leah, she's not having a good week. Do you know? And I knew you needed a moment for that. So, but yes,
yeah, I definitely did. I needed just a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're
I'm feeling
feeling
okay
all good.
now. I
Okay.
Yeah, it was the right thing to do, and I just spent a lot of time, looking back at old videos and pictures of him, and I posted in a support group on Facebook as well, which was really helpful. The Blue Cross. Um, so yeah, it was the right thing. It's very sad, but it was, yeah,
I know, and I think in our conversation that we had about it, it's like, we that's part of your role as a carer for a dog, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? About making those
it
decisions and
is.
enacting what you would
Yeah,
see as their will, basically. So,
yeah. So this is the thing, like mine and Emma's relationship is, not just a work relationship. Emma's my go-to grown-up. So if I need some adult advice or I need to just talk to a grown-up, I'll message Emma and be like, can you talk to me for a minute, please? And it's kind of just, yeah, sensible advice from an adult.
I feel like
She's
it's
my work
definitely,
mum, aren't you?
yeah, I am definitely. But I also think, I think I've always like taken the piss out of myself a little bit with that whole, there's always that analogy. I feel it's a bit of a fridge magnet piece of wisdom, which is, you can only tell a woman's like a tea bag, that one. You can only tell how strong she is until you put it in hot water and all that sort of stuff. And I think my
Mm.
entire life has been too many tests, too many tea bags, and a lot of hot water. So I kind of feel that, like, I think the thing that you can do from that, which I actually might touch on when we talk about the Suzanne Day, is if you can't learn from that tragedy and trauma and that life experience, and you can't pay it forward and try and support, then that's almost like the entire purpose of your existence, isn't it, really? And I think
Mm.
women do it really well, to be honest. But I guess we've become very close, and particularly the kind of job I do, everything is up for conversation, really. There aren't many taboo areas, are there?
No, not at all. No.
So, yes. Right, I suppose I should be looking at the list of what we were actually talking about today now. So
Yes,
you
I
said it
got a
was a
very,
lot.
very long list this morning.
I know we probably won't get through it, basically, but I was just thinking it through. So basically, the big event that's been on our calendar this week was the Suzanne Neville Designer Day, and I think I croaked my way through an introduction to it last podcast, but it happened. It was absolutely beautiful. Chapel looked incredible, and to just go a bit work related about why we do it. um, Obviously we love Suzanne, we love her dresses, we love the new collection, but why do we go to such huge effort to kind of put on something that's so visually arresting and so multi-sensory? And I think that if I was going to define what we do and I think we've worked into our philosophy, is that we want a brand expression at every touch point. So everything that we do, everyone that we partner with, everyone we work with, share the same values as us personally. And so it feels authentic, and it feels like, if I'm going to do an event, I'm not going to half-arse it, basically. It's got to be truly representative of what we believe, and we only really want to work with people that we believe in. And I think I think the brief was nailed. I think the assignment was understood, definitely. I mean, we've been sneaking a few pictures out on stories, but I would imagine we will get the rest. I mean, Sophie Duckworth did all of the photo editing, which she said she wouldn't be able to do over the weekend, and managed to get to us just before midnight. Very, very witching
Did I
hour
know
last
she's
night.
amazing?
I know it is. But it looked so good, and we'll be able to share the pictures with everyone that wasn't able to make it, or wonders whether they would like to attend an event in the future, or indeed if there's any tradespeople listening, why you might like to partner with us. So I was looking at that multi-sensory thing, and I know this sounds a bit basic, but I'm going to say it because I feel like I need to get through everyone that we work with. So obviously the visuals are really important. It doesn't hurt that Rosie, our general manager, used to be her job in Debenhams at the heyday of Debenhams was as a visual display manager. So she would be in all the stores creating incredible visual displays. So she actually brings that
Mm.
skill to what we do at the chapel. So it looks good. I mean, obviously the dresses were brand new. We stripped out everything. It was like the most perfectly curated sort of collection. The flowers were Jill Pike's flowers. Oh my God. I feel I really needed that strong injection of colour. So good that like,
Hmm.
and those reds and plums, I mean, they're really reflecting what's currently very fashionable in, mainstream fashion, but just that gave that richness to the autumn, which I thought was really beautiful. So it looked phenomenal. It smelled great. People kept saying about how it smelled beautiful. And of course, we've still got our Ike and Gabe candles, our signature candles, which plug are available to buy on our Shopify account that you may find via our website. So we had it. It
Yeah, and
always
listen, they
needs.
smell so good that last time Wojciech was at the chapel, he was like, "It smells so good in here. What is it?" And we had to give him a candle to take away with him because he was like, "I just can't get enough of the smell." And like,
Yeah,
this is Wojciech, the photographer, so that's how good they smell.
yeah. So it always tries, and we have to be a little bit careful with candles because if you burn too many candles, it can make fabrics go grey with the carbon that's burnt off it.
Mm.
So we try and keep them, say, like in the lobby and those kind of things. But so it smelled gorgeous. Now, the one thing I would say, apart from the gentle sound of popping corks and chatter, I cannot work with music in the background. I absolutely can't do it. Even if I go into the office and the girls have got something playing on one of their own devices or on the laptop, they like literally know they've got to hit the off button straight away. And I love music. My daughter's a musician. We always have music on. I'm literally first up the front in any gig. I'm first on the dance floor. But I cannot work with music on. It's not just distracting. I actually find it actively annoying. So that's bad, isn't it? I can't. In real life, we should probably have like a nice little jazz soundtrack in the back, but I can't do it. So, um, and then obviously taste. Like Gusbourne were in the house. Alice Hanson was there. Really, really talking girls through all the different varieties of English sparkling wine that Gusbourne are like so well known for, and they won like best. Now wait a minute, there was a top 100 of like best like vineyards in the world, and they're the only British vineyard in the top 50, and one of only two
Wow,
British vineyards in the top 100. So hey, that's what I'm
genius.
talking about. We want to make make sure that our brides have got the best of things. And also in the evening, we didn't get any photos of, but Alex from Pastry Corner in Southsea did us like trays of canapes, which we enjoyed and stuffed our faces with, and did that sort of thing when you go to a restaurant and you realize you've eaten everything before you took a nice picture. So there isn't any pictures of those, but I can guarantee they were lovely, particularly the like duck donuts. Sounds ghastly,
Oh,
was lovely. Yeah, I
oh,
know,
that sounds
right?
amazing.
Duck donuts. And then obviously with what we do, touch is very integral to how wedding dresses are. So again, it if you try and buy something from Primark and you touch it and the fabric doesn't feel very nice and it's a bit cheap. I
Mm.
think this is something over and over again, that how a fabric feels on your skin, how a fabric feels under your hand, those kind of things, even the kind of weight of construction of a dress, that touch and feel of
Mm.
things is another very evident physical quality touch point, which I think is really important, because obviously that
Yeah,
construction and that technical stuff is really important for me, and what
yeah.
what we represent.
Yeah, I do know that whenever I come into the chapel and there's new dresses, the first thing I do is I go and touch it. I'm just like, oh, that feels nice. That feels nice. Like you can't help it, can you?
No, no, and one of the things that did happen, I did actually stay a night in a hotel this week, and when people ask you for a review, and they got an extremely tepid review from me, and I just thought actually it wasn't horrific, but for a lot of money, I've been in Premier Inns that are better. But one of the things that I really
Mm.
didn't like was the fact the towels were scratchy and solid. And I'm just like, if I'm spending £200 for a hotel room for a night, and I'm really only going to sleep and go into the shower, I at least the bloody towels could be soft, right? Anyway, they
Mm.
should remain nameless, and they should come back to me with some apology and a commitment to do better. But anyway, they weren't that great. So, but anyway, we've got the photos of all the beauty of the designer day coming up. And I just wanted to I know I've seen an email from someone who's worried that we might share pictures where they could possibly be identified. And I just want to reassure anyone that came to the designer day that if there's any chance of identifying a bride in a dress, in any way. We won't share them until after they're married. It's that Hippocratic oath, really, that we have in bridal wear, which is, I can tell you what the bride's wearing, but then I'd have to kill you. You absolutely, it's one of those things. It's the big surprise. It's the big secret. Fantastically, over the years, I've had some right old bitches trying to find out what other people are wearing, and I must actually do it.
Really?
I haven't got enough time. Yeah, I literally some real kind of furtive stuff, and also we don't have time to go down this little cul-de-sac today, but at some point make a bookmark about bitchy things that people have done to their friends, to their family. There's some shady tactics have gone on at some point. So this is when people say,
we have to feature. People are going to want to hear this, I'm sure.
I know, right? I will.
The drama.
The drama, the shade. There's a lot there to be talked about, but there's not today, because you've already rolled your eyes at how many things that I've had on my list this morning. But it was really good, because what was good is quite a few people that had basically came to the designer day during the day or in the evening for the drinks reception with Suzanne had listened to the podcast. So that is quite good. We're not just talking to ourselves, we are talking to other people. Yay. Which is nice. So I thought that I would ask the people that came, give me some questions, please send some stuff in. I'm going to take the questions. So I actually had notes open on my phone and was taking notes as though people were asking me things. Yes, I know, right? And one of the things, just going back to that technical construction and that the actual nuts and bolts of how a wedding dress is made, what was interesting, and I know it doesn't feature that much on Suzanne's Instagram or on her website, there isn't a lot of conversation in the brand marketing from Suzanne Neville about how her stuff is made, but actually in person, that ebb and flow of conversation and technical knowledge from Suzanne to the brides was fascinating. They were really happy to kind of, they wanted to find out about it. So one of the things somebody asked her was like, what colour do you call your dresses? She was like, no, we just say pale ivory, basically. So it did make me laugh, because it was like that Henry Ford quote, any colour the customer wants as long as it's black, which was what the Henry Ford's quote is, but it's like pale ivory. So we've never gone in our industry very Farrow and Ball on this, with a million different words for white, cornforth, old white, new white, vintage
almond
white.
Milk.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just all pale ivory. So I thought that was quite funny, because again, Suzanne's, I think, skill, and also I heard her just discussing the difficulty in naming dresses, and she's like, I wish I could be a bit more pretentious about it, but really it's not her. So it's really not Suzanne to come up with 50 different words for ivory, or really academic or whatever, or pretentious names for her dresses. When you listen to her talk, she is really about the engineering and the construction, which is what I try and talk to people in the shop about, where I feel like sometimes I'm a bit boring about it, but I feel it's important to know why her name is on a dress and what that really means for a client. So and she also, somebody asked her where her fabrics came from, and she was able to name the exact town in France where her laces came from, and could show it on a map, and talked through with the bride about the company, the lace company that she worked with, which, funnily enough, I can't mention because it's a really closely guarded secret. She doesn't want everyone to know. It's a sort of where her fabrics come from and things. So it's quite
I was
fun
going to say to you that I've asked Suzanne before for details about the fabric so I could add it to the descriptions on the website, and she was like, no, we can't tell you.
I know.
So yeah, I never really. So all the other dresses, I always say, it's made from this fabric, and what comes from here, and like Jesus Pero, that's all very transparent. But Suzanne's, I never even really say what they're made of, because I don't always know.
And it's also quite tricky as well, I think, sometimes when I think there's a lot of there's two conflicting points of view that quite often, particularly mothers of the bride, have, which is the fabric content. So like the yarn content, is it pure silk, is it not pure silk? But also they want to know about the durability and the performance of the fabric. So will it crease is one of the big questions we're always told about. So to stop things creasing, you have to usually put an element of man-made content into the fabric. But I don't think that people want to hear that. So, I think there's a little bit of a kind of, like vague smoke and mirrors Vaseline on the lens about like the real technical fabric content. But similarly, people don't want a dress that creases. So, and they want to be able to sit down on it. So I can't say, so we're like, yes, silk. It's got silk in it, somewhat, but it's not all. It's very rare to have 100% silk. So, another question that came up quite a bit was how much can you change a dress? And I think that was giving people some anxiety about how much you can change it. And my answer to this is like, it's how brave are you? I mean, it's at the end of the day, if you are nervous about changes, then doing something small like changing a long sleeve to a 3/4 length sleeve, raising a neckline, raising a back neckline, reducing a skirt, those are kind of things which are like, I think they just make people feel comfortable in themselves. I really don't think to the outside observer, any of the guests, anyone are really going to notice, but they are just things that for the sake of the bride's personal comfort and therefore how easy it will be for them to radiate confidence, those little tweaks I think are really nice to be able to do. They're not frightening, and usually I would say to people, don't do something that is making you fearful or something that you can't reverse. So that would be my normal kind of thing. Now, it was quite interesting actually when we were on Saturday, because Suzanne was showing us sneak peeks on her phone of Alexandra Burke wearing a dress that she wore at the Royal Albert Hall for the Remembrance Day concert. So and Suzanne was actually going, look at this dress I've done. Look at the way the neckline falls off the shoulder. Look at this sleeve. Look at this. She turned the dress around for actually Alexandra's stylist, who's a guy called Carl Willett, in about, less than 8 hours. So from design, toile, making, back to the central London and fitted, it's about an 8-hour turnaround. Which, to be fair, you're only really going to get that if you are a celebrity and you're going to get some coverage. And anyone who is interested in looking at the dress, you can see it on Suzanne's Instagram grid. But that was something where, like, Suzanne, for a celebrity, can do something that doesn't exist, can change everything enormously. And the stylist and the designer are going to be working with the client. The client's got enough confidence to go with it. And I don't want to say it's only a concert. It's a very important sort of career high for Alexandra Burke, but it's it's not necessarily a wedding dress, but that you do have that level of ability. You can go completely bespoke with things, but it does take a much more brave bride who's prepared to look at something and be like, wow, okay, I've never seen that before, which really flies against the kind of the narrative of choosing a wedding dress, which is like, which is it the one, i.e. you've got to go on a quest. So that was quite interesting. So I think somebody else asked, somebody was getting quite confused between, we talked last week about flagship versus stockist. Also, we were getting that confusion between, if you get it from a stockist, is it not made specially for you? It's like, yes, absolutely. It's exactly the same. It's still an absolute bespoke piece, and everything, as your dress order goes through Suzanne Neville's production, your name is effectively attached to all the paperwork. When they cut the pieces out of the fabric, I've seen what they do actually. They roll all of the pieces of the cut dress around like a fabric tube, like the inner, like a giant toilet roll, basically, to stop it creasing. And that's all got the bride's name on and everything. And then one person at Suzanne Neville's production will make that dress all the way through. So somebody's name is attached to every panel of every dress. So every cut that's made in a piece of fabric is done in the knowledge of who is wearing that dress at the end. So that's whether you're having a dress from a flagship store or a dress from a stockist, it is made absolutely personally and bespoke for you. But that doesn't mean that like everything is made to measure, or it doesn't mean everything is couture, because there are 3 different ways of doing that. But it absolutely, every dress is personally made and cut, and only cut because that person has asked for it, which I just seemed quite evident. Like, I didn't realize people wouldn't get that, but then when I say it out loud, you just think, oh no, they're not. Because we'd had a few questions where we actually took quite a lot of standard size orders on Saturday, which is quite rare with Suzanne, because the fit is so precise. But we had a few people just show up that were like, you couldn't have improved the fit of the dress by doing an intermediate calico fitting, and really all that needed to happen was the hem maybe needed to be done post-production. So that's a very unusual situation, but it doesn't mean because those girls were ordering a standard size that when one is just being taken off a peg, the same process happens. The fabric is still cut.
It still comes from Suzanne Neville. It's not actually just from Miss Bush, is it? It still comes from there.
Yeah.
But you've used some words there that people might not understand. So like calico, they might like. Do you want to talk about, what a made to order is, what a made to measure is, what a toile is?
Yeah, I mean, so a made to order dress is exactly how I was just saying. Even if you have a standard size, it means that a cutter and the production manager will still take a roll of fabric off a shelf at Suzanne Neville's and cut you out your dress, but just in a standard size. So it will go through and it will be made exactly as the sample. And then there is an intermediate service you could have where we can do either half sizes. So if you weren't quite a 12 or a 14, but you might have been a 13, you can do a half size. So that's basically an inch grade on the pattern between sizes. You could also have a split size. So you could have a 12 top and a 14 bottom. Or you could have another very specifically briefed change to a pattern. So you could say, well, can we have this size, but could we make the bodice an inch longer because the bride's very tall? And then what we do for a lot of people, if the instruction is not that easy to say and not that easy to make, we have the ability to offer what is sometimes called a calico fitting, or sometimes is called a canvas fitting, or sometimes it's called a toile. So basically toile is just the French word for cotton, so it amounts to the same thing. So with Suzanne Neville dresses, she has a very strong corseted interior into most of her dresses. And what that is constructed from is a very firm cotton canvas where the boning, which is nylon boning, is stitched to it and sculpts the person's body. And so if someone was, for example, my shape, there would be no way that you could get round having an intermediate fitting in calico. Now, it costs quite a lot more money, and that's why we always weigh up for a client whether it's absolutely necessary or whether it's a preference. And I think the difference is about £1,500. So it's not inconsiderable. But when you see the calico intermediate fitting, the toile, the cotton intermediate fitting, you realise it's like a little mini mock-up dress. So made not in the another thing Suzanne told me. When they do a lace dress and they make a mock-up, the canvas, I was said, oh yeah, and they put some lace on it. It's probably about 50p a metre, that lace, but they put lace on it. She goes, it is not 50p a metre. She goes, I very much wish it was 50p a metre. It's quite expensive, Emma, because if I use 50p a metre lace, then you wouldn't kind of see how it was. I was like, oh, sorry. So yeah, so basically, I was told that, so basically you have that, and you can see when you actually walk through that process how complex that is, and the skill that it goes into making that intermediate mini dress first, and then it gets worked on like a lot by Jo. And it gets worked on a lot by the Neville team, making the pattern in the first place, making the mini dress, worked on by us, worked on by the pattern team again. So it's not difficult to see why it costs £1,500. And I think it's actually really good value for money, but I only recommend it when it's absolutely essential. So that is that's what a toile is, and that's why we talk about it. Not every bridal designer or manufacturer offers it, but if you were someone like me with really big boobs, then it is the way that you really nail the fit on a dress perfectly. So yeah, that was it basically. But we did do, as I say, an incredible amount of standard sizes. So that was quite useful. So
yeah, that's quite rare, because you said before that people don't just scale up, do they? Usually
no.
bigger on the bottom or bigger on the top, or it's rare to be the same size up and down.
Yeah, and I would only do that if I'm physically looking at the person in the dress sample in the shop, and you go, I don't know what I would change to this. So again, I wouldn't just order a standard size. If I hadn't seen a person in a standard size, I wouldn't have the confidence to do it again. So it is something that's just, it's accidental and a bit of a blessing. And you still would have to pay for alterations on top of a standard size dress. So it does really close the gap between the cost of couture and the cost of standard. It's not like, because it's standard, that's it. You're still going to have to pay to have your hem done, or a bustle, or maybe a few little tweaks, but it really is, yeah, or some extra accessories or something. So yeah, but it was just great. It's great to be able to offer that. It's great to have people just buttoned into things. And I know Suzanne can come in for quite a lot of criticism about her sizing running quite small, which it does, relative to like mainstream stuff. But as she said to a bride in the chapel, these are not casual dresses. She's like, if you were buying a blouse or a shirt and it was a 12 or 14, there's going to have a lot of ease, it doesn't need to fit properly. So like what she's doing is strictly cutting her dresses to the strict body size. And most high street things or most mainstream brands we buy have got at least two sizes. Yeah. Two sizes kind of like grace in them and a lot of stretch. So that's that.
And it's important to say as well, we try not to use dress sizes anyway. It's all based on measurement, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're not going to be like, oh, I'm wearing a dress that's this size. So you're not going to know what size you're wearing.
No.
You're just also wearing it just for you.
Yeah, on my client's contract, I didn't even put what size. I was just like, we're ordering standard size, and that's on my notes, but it's not on their paperwork.
Yeah.
So, but they saw themselves in that dress in the store, knowing it did up beautifully. So that's the really important thing as well. So,
yep.
So,
okay,
what's our timings?
We're at 32 minutes 40, and we're not even halfway through the notes. Did you want to pick just a couple more things we want to talk about? There was one more question, and it was, would you recommend going to the church in an E-type jag? Do you want to quickly just say yes or no?
That's a really good story, though. And actually, it's a much bigger story than it may actually seem. And again, the bride and her mother had arrived in the evening. She'd already ordered her dress, but she'd got a lot of questions. I think they may well have been podcast listeners, actually. Yes, I think they are. So I'm not going to say their names because some of this involves sort of family and sensitive information. But
so
basically,
the bride and her mum.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know
lovely.
if both of them were listening. One of them was definitely anyway. But so I won't name them. They know who they are. But they basically got hold of me and were like, right, I just would like to ask you a question about whether you think it's a good idea to go to a church in an E-type jag. And I'm like, really? Strictly? No, not really. I mean, E-type jags are fabulous, obviously. Fantastic to have one at your disposal, but they're low. So I don't know how you're going to get into it easily. And also you're never going to get out of it elegantly either.
Tiny, aren't they?
Yeah, tiny. And you are going to crease just about everything. Your veil is probably not going to be easy to do. Your skirts, it wouldn't matter what size dress you're wearing. You're not getting in and out of that without creases, without damage, without a complete faff. So like my straight answer was no. Now the mum was like, yes, I knew it. I absolutely knew it. I knew I was right. And I was like, that. But then I was like, can I just ask about the car? So it turned out that this is the bride's father's absolute pride and joy, a grey E-type. So something that he's always had in his head that he wanted to have this car. I mean, I think this is like justifying the purchase, to be quite honest, but I digress. It's like Marshy and his Cortina. I think it's something that he'd always thought in his mind, because it's his absolute pride and joy and his passion. He would love to drive his daughter to church on her wedding day in the car. And that's something he's held very dear. So basically, I drew on the experience of being in counselling sessions with my sons, because I think it would be very easy as a girl to be like, no, it's gonna crease my dress, not happening. So I've had to, I literally feel like this is the benefit of like having, been through some of the things I've been through. It's like, right, this is a boy with an overwhelming passion. I mean, we've heard your son Felix on his video games. Boys sometimes they get that fixed passion, and if you don't acknowledge how fundamentally important that is to them from an emotional point of view, it's something that sparks joy in them. It's a passion. It may suggest at a slightly neurospicy head, do you know what I mean? But nevertheless, if this is something that you've got to acknowledge, that this isn't a inanimate object that is annoying, that this is something that actually brings that person joy, and they've seen that going, they've seen the vision for this. So actually we walked around that, and we kind of talked through how we would talk to her dad about it and say, what an incredible idea, and I really want this car to be part of my wedding day and my wedding journey. So we came up I came up with the idea of a wedding convoy. So basically the dad would lead the convoy in the E-Type. So he's actually leading a sort of procession, and like going at the head of the procession, leading his daughter to church in his car. Now, I don't know whether that idea has flown with them, but I think it's like with the dad. But I think it's a way of just honouring people's passions and special interests, and really working out how that you, without upsetting them or taking or just slicing the joy away, or not acknowledging the importance of that thing. Which to me, I would, if I had an E-Type jab, I'd look at it once and be like, that's nice. It's a bit like me having my own Jag. I liked it when I got it, but do I polish it like it's a little baby? No, I don't. I think
it's really sweet, because like, if he's an older gentleman, so they probably don't show their emotions very much, and it's not very often that they'd be showing, that kind of depth of feeling. So it's like his way of being emotional, and something that shows his love for his daughter. I think it's really sweet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, but I would just say to dads out there, if you want to drive your daughter to church, anything, could you get a white taxi, a big white old London taxi? Yes. This is the easiest
Something
thing
more
in the
practical.
world. Yeah, it's absolutely the easiest thing in the world to actually get. You can step up into it. It's got giant bench seating and enough room for any kind of skirt. So you can sort of lay slightly askance in a slim skirt, and you can spread out a big skirt. So, I mean, that's the kind of size that I think is good.
We did have Tots on the blog last month, and she drove back from the wedding in like a vintage Ferrari, and that was really, really cool. So I don't know how she squashed into that, because she had quite a big skirt, didn't she?
But I don't mind squashing in on the way out of church, because quite a lot of the key photos are done then, and like, quite a lot of the nerves are done. You basically,
it's a relief.
Yeah. And also, when you go to like church, I think we've discussed this before about, where do the bridesmaids go? If it's only finally a bride and their dad in a small car arriving at church, and everyone else is in situ and in their place, imagine what a screwed up, hideous old mess that's going to be. And you've got a nervous bride and a nervous dad, and
he's driving as well.
Yeah,
so he's can't even sit and really.
Yeah, so I think jumping into a car coming out of church doesn't worry me so much. But then, if they did the E-Type on the way out, would the dad symbolically give the keys to his new son-in-law to drive? Who knows? I doubt it very much. But anyway, I know. Can you imagine? But I think
you can have my daughter, but you can't have my car.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Hands off the wheels. So I just thought it was just a really interesting sort of an aside, and a way that basically, I suppose, the experience that I've got both in the talking about weddings for like 30 years, even though I haven't been to like a squillion weddings, like a wedding planner would be, or like an event manager. But it's those sort of things, I think, and having done the counselling with the boys, you can think of a creative solution that respects and honours everyone's kind of wishes. And I think that was, and the bride said to me that it was quite, she was absolutely relieved, because this had been going round and round in her head, and she didn't want to let her dad down, and she didn't want to do this, and her mum didn't want her to get in the car, and because she thought it was screwed up, and to try and work an elegant solution through that keeps the peace and actually is fun. And I just said to her, well, she said that she thought she had herself quite rigid thinking, and I was like, well, you probably do a sensible job. Like, mine isn't a sensible job, so mine is a flight of fancy every day, where you come up with creative solutions on the hoof because you have to. And people are always asking us practical questions about dresses, whether it's dance floor questions, beach questions, aeroplane questions, car questions, dog questions. How am I going to do this question? How am I going to get my, insulin pump in this? How is my stoma bag going to fit? Where is my EpiPen going to go? Those are the questions. Where can I put this horrific piece of jewelry that I don't want to wear but needs to be on my person on the day? Those are our job has always been to find a creative answer to those questions, really. So I think that's why it's nice to be so useful to people, to have, and that's why I would encourage people to email in to hello@bizpush.co.uk and ask us questions.
Ask
because
anything. It doesn't have to just be, what shoes can I wear with this dress? It can be anything, and Emma will probably know the answer. She just
or
you're
we'll
just
make
a
something
fountain
up.
of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and
okay, listen, we're at 42 minutes. You've got 8 minutes to talk about one more topic. I'm just gonna, before you start going off on something else.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a little bit more about cars then. Is that all right?
Okay.
So only
Yes.
because I would say the other thing that I've got a lot of narrative evidence as well of vintage cars being quite problematic. So while we were having this conversation about cars on Saturday, somebody else had said that they'd gone to their wedding in their dad's vintage Bentley, and it had a moth infestation. So as the bride was walking down the aisle, she'd got lots of moths trapped between layers in her skirt. So,
no.
Which was a bit, I mean, I thought in a way I quite liked it. It was slightly gothic and appealed to that sort of
Yeah,
slightly
I was thinking for
Addams
me,
family.
I would
Yeah.
love it, but
Yeah. But if you were a bit moth squeamish or something like that, then I would say that's not a really good thing to do. I've had more than one incident of people getting into a vintage car, and a vintage car enthusiast having recently polished their leather seats in there, and there being transference between the colour of the polish and the skirt. So I've seen that happen on both red polish and yellow polish as well. So I think,
yellow.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
So, and I
gosh.
think blue as well, actually. So I've seen, yeah, obviously, like I suppose
Wow.
if you'd got like a sort of natural coloured, yeah. So there's been quite a lot of different polish related car seat incidents. So that's not great. I've also had people have their dress skirt shut into a door as well. So they've got an oily mark on their dress. So that is before you've got to anything, before you've got down the aisle. Before you got down the aisle, you have got to the creasing, the polish marks, the moths, and the oil. Do you know what I mean? There's quite a lot of hazard points there as well. But saying that, I have seen people. I've seen quite a lot. If we went back through our real life bride pictures. In fact, I saw Alice from Gusbourne showed me some pictures of her friend Alice's wedding, who Alice got her dress from us. And I think she was in some kind of bedecked Land Rover or truck. I mean, super practical. It looked really cool and arty as well. But again, you gotta steel yourself for some grub for something like that. So I think that is, you just gotta work out what your level of cleanliness needs to be. And then I would also say the other thing that I've had before, where someone had arrived at their venue, and it was an extremely windy day, and I've had one person have their skirt catch on a car door and rip.
Ooh.
Oh, I know, right?
Ooh.
And another person have that happen, similar incident but with a veil. So I think that cars are, one of those areas that I think for all of these things, and it just sounds if you're a particular micromanagey type of person, I would say it's worth doing a risk assessment for this thing, because it's such a symbolic moment getting to church. I mean, and I'm saying church here, and I'm working. I'm going to say one other thing, but I'm working on the concept that this is a very traditional ceremonial way of arriving to a wedding. I know that other people have arrived by helicopter, horse,
Tractor. We've had
tractor,
tractors too.
and also if you're having a civil ceremony, you can just walk downstairs from wherever you've got ready, just downstairs. So I am addressing a very specific bride here, so one that's probably going from one place in a car to another place, whether that's a place of worship or not. But that is probably, I remember doing that in my first wedding, and I was with my dad, and my next door neighbour had a vintage car. God knows what kind of vintage car it was. I could probably get it out, an old picture out, and I looked like I was sort of sitting in a bubble bath because my skirt was really big. And I think I can't even remember if my dad was sitting next to me, but that is just the most surreal journey you ever take in your life. You don't really know what's going on. You're an absolute bag of nerves. You've got no idea. I do know people have close relationships with their dad. Mine wasn't like that. He wouldn't have been my emotional rock, shall we put it that way. So you're effectively in a really weird situation, in a weird car that you've never sat in a weird dress you've never worn before. And the concept is you arrive symbolically pure without shit on your skirt, basically. So that that I actually took the mick out of myself. Yesterday, I went to see Rue, the artist, at the last day of her exhibition.
Oh, cool.
And and her exhibition was called Dressing Up, and I bought some art for the shop. And she's doing the art outside the shop. I digress.
She's she's doing the graffiti, isn't she, outside the shop?
Yes, street art. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Street art. Sorry, not graffiti.
Yeah, it's already got graffiti on it. So with on the hideous box outside. But she had this exhibition which she called Dressing Up, and the different ironies and around women and form and gaze and dressing up and things like that. All the sort of stuff I love talking about. And the fleetingness of it, and deconstructing clothing and stuff. And I said to her, I was just taking the mix, saying, well, I sell pretend virgin dresses. I don't think that many of my clients are getting married chaste, shall we say. I think some of them do. It's a very small percentage. Some do, but most don't. So but that you're wearing a pale dress because it's a symbolic move. So the car can be a place where that symbolic purity can somewhat fall apart. So it's quite a big, and then, as I say, now we reflect on what that car journey can mean to people, something they've, from all parties involved in it. It's not, and I think this is the thing with weddings and why they can become quite emotionally overwhelming, because that's just one tiny part of a wedding. And how long have we spoken about it? Some time.
Yeah.
And how many things could possibly go wrong with it? A lot.
I do think it needs to be somebody's job. So if you say to somebody beforehand, please make sure that my skirt isn't stuck in the door, or, that dad hasn't polished the seats with something he shouldn't have, like, that's your job to keep those things in order. I think that's a good idea.
Well, and also somebody asked us about winter wedding tips, didn't they, a couple of podcasts ago? We were like, somebody has to be ready at the door of the car with giant brollies. You need to look at how people look after royals and celebrities and see what they do. And also, hysterically, if you Google celebrities turning up to say the red carpet in Cannes or things, there's one hysterical picture of some supermodel getting out of a car, and she's just a basic blob of tulle emerging like a sort of caterpillar out of a chrysalis, basically, out the back of the car. And it's not elegant at all in any way. I think that's why when you see the Met Gala, you actually don't see the celebrities getting out of cars. It's probably best left to the imagination, or they're probably in one of those giant Addison Lee taxis that's been specially adapted, because
they're just sat in the back of a van.
Well, yeah. I think, didn't Elton John once go to one of his birthday parties, stood up in the back of a transit or something, because he had this really massive Louis XIV wig on and he was too tall for any other kind of transport. So, you know, I feel like, I know that this, I'm slightly taking the mick, but it's that bit though. It's that transition from comfy bedroom coziness of like putting a frock on or when you're getting ready room to like, ta-da! Here I and I think sometimes even when people are choosing their dress, I think it's quite hard to think of them. They basically have two fixed points in their wedding. It's like literally the first moment everyone claps eyes on them as they stand at the top of whatever kind of aisle that is for them, and also the dance floor. So they have one like split second there, and the dance floor, which is probably like 8 to 10 hours afterwards. And then the rest of the movement and the behaviour of the dress is not even really considered. So but yeah, so I did think I could probably go on quite a bit about cars.
And we're now at 51 minutes. So
okay, and we'll wrap it up there then. And again, we'll roll over the rest of the topics for next week. So
oh my gosh, we didn't even get halfway through the list. There's so much on there.
I know, but imagine
it's for every Monday morning I get just the lists from you are getting longer and longer. I think we need to be doing 2 a week.
Well, it's just, I mean, I have seen a lot of clients this week and I have been able to talk again. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think it's like, it's a public service. I mean, nobody talks about this. And I know it sounds quite deep divey into like what something is very small. But as I say, my bride was stressing out about it. She was spinning out. And it's like, once you find an elegant, fabulous solution or you've been able to talk it through, and really important, and I think this is the same thing with everything in bridal, when you've acknowledged that it is a big deal. Like this one thing is a convergence of everything that you've thought about in your family for a very long time is a big deal. And don't feel bad about thinking it's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
right,
that's a good note to end on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. All right, darling.
Amazing.
Okay, lovely to chat again.
You too. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
You'd like to know, wouldn't you? You'd like to know, wouldn't you? You'd like to know.